Kevin Rose and his guests are not registered investment advisors. All opinions are Kevin's and his guests alone. Nothing discussed today should be relied upon for investment decisions, nor is it investment advice. This show is solely for information and entertainment purposes only. Please work directly with an investment professional.
We're calling this, it was this Dignation.
Yeah.
The lost episode.
Yeah, exactly. You're the Alex replacement, I guess.
Yes. I want Alexis for an Alex. I swear I DM'd you a minute ago. This was early into the NFT rabbit hole, probably early this year. And I was like, Kevin, I want to do a podcast with you. I will be your Alex. I was That's so right. impressed by the fact that you've been, I mean, you were ahead of the game, obviously, with Web2. Happy to talk about that. But you've been absolutely pioneering on Web3 and in particular the culture and communities around NFTs and digital art and all this stuff. And I'm not ashamed to say it. It's been great following you on this. And I think most of my great ideas around Web3 have come from reading your stuff and listening to your stuff.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. I mean, I think a great place, a good place to start where one thing I absolutely figured I must do on this show is I think about the early Dig and Reddit days. I mean, late 2004 for when Dig first got off the ground, and I just want to say, I want to apologize because I said some really mean things about Reddit. And I feel like,
did you?
Yeah, dude, I was immature. We had this podcast, we were drinking. I look back on that time and I think a lot of fun jokes, a lot of stuff that I'd watch now and I'd cringe. Like,
that's like, youth though. That was definitely me in my 20s. Yeah,
it's definitely youth. But I feel bad for some of that stuff, and I hope if you saw any of it, I hope now that you know not to take it personally. And it was just me being. I mean, it wasn't like every single episode we were bashing you, but I know that there was some rivalry kind of going on there where it got a little intense at times.
Dude, okay, from my point of view, and so I really appreciate that. Second, we've not spoken about this stuff. Like, despite being internet friends, despite being in your DMs or texts, like, I feel a weird closeness with you and an amazing like amount of respect. So I appreciate that. At the time, there's literally one thing that is just lodged in my brain, which was from a clip of a live Dignation episode where someone threw a Reddit shirt on the stage and you pretended to blow your nose on it and throw it aside. And somehow that clip ended up in front of me. And because of the person that I am, I don't take any of this stuff personally, but I do take it, what's the word? Well, maybe I do take it personally. You know how there's that great Jordan quote from the documentary where he's like, and I took that personally. I think one of the things that has weirdly been very motivating for me my entire career is haters, is people who have dismissed stuff that I've done or all this stuff. And I literally put this stuff on my wall. And you all were in our heads, like in my mind, you were the Goliath because, like, in all honesty, hand to God, like, I did not know, neither Steve nor I knew about Dig when we built Reddit. And I still have the email, like, so we launched June of 2005. So y'all were way ahead. Okay. July, like a month in, I learned about dig.com and I sent an email to Steve and Paul Graham, our lead investor, and the guy who started Y Combinator. I was like, oh shit, we have a really big competitor. The guy who started it is this tech TV celebrity. Like, they have VC funding. We had $12,000 in the bank. At the time, YC wasn't like a known quantity. It was just this experiment. And they're based in Silicon Valley and we're based in the suburbs of Somerville. We were in Medford, Massachusetts in a little rented apartment.
I didn't know that. It's amazing.
And it was the two of us in this rented apartment against what felt like this amazing arch nemesis that was an existential threat to our business. And for the next N years, I had to, as the face of Reddit, always explain. I mean, every interview, anytime anyone had talked to us, any person about Reddit, they'd be like, oh, that sounds a lot like Dig. How are you different from Dig? Why are you different from Dig? Why did you even bother doing this? Doesn't Dig exist? And so for years, it was this sort of phantom, this specter that was, seemed to always be one step ahead, always seemed to be better at shipping, always seemed to be better funded, always seemed to be better everything. And so that was the only moment where somehow at some point over the years, that clip got lodged in my brain because it was put in front of me. I was like, okay, all right, game on. Like, blow your nose on Snoo. Like, we will do everything we can to make sure that you regret that. And again, none of it was personal. It's just the mindset that I have is one that I latch on these things and use it as motivation when I'm feeling like I'm having an off day. And the irony is, like, I think we were a lot more alike or similar than different, or at least as I see now, as we're both now older, we're both proud girl dads. I just, and I'm more mature now myself. And I realize, like, man, I mean, like, you were so right on some of the biggest trends that shaped consumer social. And now you've been so right and so early on the trends that are going to shape, like, everything. The internet. Web2 is going to look like a blip. The stuff we were doing, the stuff that we cared about is going to seem like this weird, ugly middle where it was like, we hadn't quite figured it out yet compared to what is happening now. And so I appreciate you a lot, Kevin. And I wish you'd had me on Dignation back in the day. We could have sparred, the Reddit
during the heyday
controversy in the heyday.
Well, the funny thing is, dude, after all those years, it's like I felt, well, the first few years, Dig had a lot more traffic than Reddit.
Way more. Crushed us.
And then I remember being like, you guys sold to Condé Nast, right?
I know. And it was GG, right? We should have given up.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, good. Like, it's done. They're over.
Yeah.
Like, we won. Like, awesome. And then, dude, those subreddits were so brilliant where you just deputized the community to go and build this long tail of content.
Dude, the entire time I thought I was going to wake up one morning to you announcing that you would let users create their own sub digs, or you call it something better. Like, the thing, okay, this was the argument I gave to investors when I would say, hey, we're raising our Series A or Series whatever, and then didn't, obviously sold it to Condé. The thing that we are betting on is the Dig front page is always going to have a ceiling of people for whom it is going to feel relevant for that community, because there's only so many people who can look at that front page and say, this is for me. And in, the mid aughts, we didn't have great recommendation engines, computer or machine learning, all this stuff wasn't there. Right. So it was like, how do you hack that? And we realized in the first month that we should just be allowing people to create their own communities, because once our front page had too many programming or not enough programming links on it,
right?
The programming community was like, there's not enough stuff here. So we gave them r/programming and realized, oh, good, we'll just let users do that. There was not a brilliant insight there other than let's just solve this problem. And for years, I just hoped no one over there would do it, because if you all did, you already had the user base. You already had all the everything. And anyway, so I'm happy you didn't. So thank you for not doing that, because I think you would have eviscerated us.
Well, what was crazy is right then when you all were doing that, there was a couple things. Like, internally, we had this dream, and it was my fault. Like, I had this dream that it would be algorithms that we could kind of sit there and look at where interest was flowing and use a piece of math to determine what belonged on the homepage, rather than human editors. And that just never worked, man.
But it's here now.
Yeah. I mean,
TikTok's determining our media diet with an algorithm. It just was, 15, 20 years later.
Yeah, exactly. So that never worked. But, honestly, I remember you came out and said when we launched that version of Dig that just completely flopped.
Oh, the open letter. Oh, this is awkward.
You came out and you said, like, this felt like it had VC meddling in it.
God.
But dude, you were absolutely
how embarrassed
right.
I look.
No, you were right. It was that time when, for us, we were like, we had raised enough venture capital, we had a fat team, and that we had a lot of heads. We didn't have enough revenue. And so we were like scrambling for ways to, a lot of advertisers back then, at least the big brands that we were trying to pitch to, they didn't like it when you had weird shit on the front page, right? They were just like, oh, that's like too weird to put our brand next to. You know what I'm talking about?
Brand safety all the time.
Yeah. So we had to like scramble and figure out how can we make this safer. And honestly, we just turned our back on the community that got us there. And you all embrace that. You stayed lean, and you played the long game, and it worked. So hats off to you, man. Like it's I mean, and I would imagine there's an IPO down the road here, which is going to be crazy.
I should have prepared better for this. I was like, what are all the embarrassing things that are coming? Yeah, that was, okay. Well, I appreciate that because I remember Mike Larrington wrote the front page story on TechCrunch about that. And he was like, guy who slams Dig for copying Twitter. No, guy who copied Dig slams Dig for copying Twitter or something. And I took that personally because I'm like, dude, no, we were just ignorant. Yes, Dig built it first, but in 2005, it was possible to be that ignorant about interesting things on the internet. But that said, I do think the hot take that I'm convinced of is if Reddit doesn't get acquired, actually there was a USV, Fred Wilson invited me over in 2010. So I'd left Reddit in early 2010. We'd gotten started on this travel search website called Hitmonk. Rest in peace.
Oh yeah, I used it a bunch. No, it was great, man.
It was a great site.
Yeah,
another one ahead of its time.
Seriously.
Travel is a terrible, terrible industry. For the wrong, if you're in the business of just getting people their flights, you're just making nothing. But anyway, my dad was a travel agent. He still is 20, 30 years in the business. And he warned me, but I didn't listen because that's what kids do. I guess they make dumb mistakes. But Fred Wilson called me to the office and he was like, look, we want to bring Reddit out of Condé Nast and we want to capitalize it. I've not shared this. And he had the whole team there and I just sat there and I was like, thank you. But I'm really excited about travel search. And, I just didn't have the confidence. I did not have the confidence. I didn't have the savviness. And I was just like, well, I don't know. This sounds like a lot of responsibility. And like, let's just see how this travel thing works out.
Please tell me you got some ownership though.
But when I came back as chairman in 2014, yes, don't worry.
Okay, good.
The 776 Foundation is going to be very well funded. I've got creative names. That foundation is going to be very well funded from that. And I'm mostly, thinking back to these moments where I'm like, God, a few different decisions in execution. And I'll even go so far as to say, I don't think Twitter should have existed because I think if either one of us had nailed on the community side, but then also the sort of, not the self-promotion side of it, but giving creators a platform to say, hey, come here and post your content. This has historically been the thing that it gutted me every time because I would talk to webcomic artists back in the day and like OG creators, XKCD, Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, Dinosaur Comics. And they say, Reddit loves me. How do I participate more? And I would have to say to them, just comment and make good stuff because they were so used to saying, oh no, let me post. Can I tweet stuff out? Can I post? Can I? It's like, no, actually like it's the product is hostile towards that, because it's viewed as self-promotion, all this other stuff. But I look at so much of these platforms that have emerged and I just think, God, we had the right pieces. We had the right everything. Discord is another one where I was like, that was built out of the Reddit sidebar, right? Mm-hmm. Gaming communities on Reddit would say, hey, go join the Discord. And it was very clear, right? So the good news is, we both did okay. And at the end of the day, Web3 is going to fix all of this, dude. Yeah. It's going to fix all of this. And the community stuff from 2004 that you were espousing, and 2005, I was espousing, it's the blueprint, except now people have real ownership. And so the value of that community is more than internet points, man. It's real. I'm
curious. I mean, given you got this massive platform in Reddit, and I know like your day-to-day is shifted, right?
Yes.
In terms of your role there.
I'm out.
You're out. Clear. But are you, do you not look at that and say, gosh, why doesn't Reddit just embrace all of this Web3 tech? I know that they've talked about it for a long time. Like, do you have any insight into what's going on there? Can't talk about it.
Kevin, I can't. But I also, I do not speak for the company. I left pretty publicly last year.
Yeah.
Post George Floyd and everything else. I am, let me say this. There is an interesting thing that's happened here. And let's talk about Meta, because that's or Facebook, their real name.
Their real name. I love that.
Facebook historically, these incumbents historically have had a huge advantage because of distribution, right? Facebook wants to, or Instagram wants to copy Snap. They can roll it out to millions of users. Great. If the feature's sticky, it'll stick around. Great. They've expanded their product, right? Stories is a perfect example. Excuse me. And yet I think with Web3, these incumbent platforms, because they have the existing user base and distribution, actually have a tremendous liability. And it's worse than the innovator's dilemma because, again, what we started with is community is what matters here. And you saw this with Discord having to roll back the NFT, a pretty light NFT integration. And
Super
Jason's a smart dude. Jason, I have a little bit of Discord paper, full disclosure, but like they've done, I think, a very great job building something that is core infrastructure almost by accident for Web3. And yet the community there is still really pretty defensive about the concept. I think there's a learning curve there. But you start going down the list, and I think every one of these platforms, if Discord is having this much trouble getting a light feature pushed out, the education process for all these other platforms, and not to mention the community buy-in, I don't want to say is impossible, but it's really, really, really hard. And what you and I learned before anyone else realized it was that the CEO role of the future is just as much a head of state as it is a business leader. And right, I'm sure you had some weird conversations with your investors about like something going on the platform and saying, no, I've got this, like, we know, I've got a sense for where this, this or that decision with the community. And it's almost like it's almost like a governance or political type job. You have to understand that side of it.
Like when that DVD key got released. Do you remember that?
DVD key. Yes.
Yeah.
And making decisions of what to take down or what not to. And so we got a 101. This is in our bones, right? We can't unsee that lived experience. And every CEO we back that we invest in now going forward, or any PFP project lead or any of these teams, has to default think this way. Whereas again, there's this weird, awkward phase of Web2 founders and CEOs who, if they haven't lived and breathed internet communities for the last 15 years, are kind of walking into a field that doesn't feel, the battlefield has changed drastically. And it's a very different experience. And so for those reasons of both a community that has to get sort of shifted over and brought over, and leadership just not having a sort of default community mindset, it's going to be very hard. And it's never been a better time to be starting from zero, because the expectations of your community are so low, and because where it can go from here is so much greater. Like retconning that in a community is very hard. And even things, so I think my greatest contributions to the Reddit product were upvotes and downvotes on comments, which led to karma score changes, and then these awards. So like people today introduce themselves to me as like, I'm a 12-year Redditor. They don't say their government name. They don't even say their username because maybe they don't want me to know that. They say I'm a 12-year Redditor. And it was a little badge along with a number of others that we had, because after like 6 months, the karma scores were so high that a new user would just be totally unmotivated. They would never hit that goal, even if you did it by day or by week or whatever. So I created these daily awards based off of GoldenEye, because when you ended a GoldenEye 4-person deathmatch, even if you were the worst, you still got usually some award, like most cowardly. Right. And so even though there can only be one winner, everyone felt like they had some participation trophy, essentially, for some unique thing. And these awards became a big part of the culture and a big part of the community. But again, they had no value outside of these made up internet points. Now, the fact that a community can be rewarded for being early and right just by participating, whether it's playing a video game like Axie, whether it's participating in one of these online communities, whether it's buying an NFT, whether it's whatever, like that, now starting out at zero is huge, because every one of those early community members sees the potential upside.
Yeah. And the potential upside is monetary, right? Like it's real. Like not just
rent, pays your bills.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a really cool advantage that these new, like I look at like GM.xyz and some of these little communities that they gate membership via an NFT. So you have to have an NFT to enter in. I mean, it's just like the way you would build things if you did it from scratch today. I think, what I think a prime example of this is, I don't know about you, but like I have an extra laptop sitting around that is my Windows box, right? And it's just for gaming, right?
Yeah, I got mine. It's right here. It's a desktop PC right next to me.
You don't use it for anything else, but it's a gaming rig, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that interface and I'm like, my God, they need to do something to this, right? Then I got the new Windows. I downloaded the beta because I'm like, oh, this looks new and interesting.
Who does that?
It downloaded the beta?
Downloaded the new beta of Windows?
Yeah, because who cares,
Wow, That's impressive, man.
But like, so I'm playing around with it and I'm just like, oh man, they didn't go all the way. You know what I mean? Because they had this old legacy group of, hundreds of millions of people that if they went all the way, it's going to piss off a lot of people. And I feel that's the problem with any existing Web2 company today in embracing this new stuff. You almost have to take I like what Discord is doing in that they've said, you can extend us via bots. So like, we'll put together an SDK and go and extend gating, go and extend rewards all via bots. and we'll shove that off to the community. That's kind of, that's pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's that is the best solution that sort of solves the problem well enough while like kind of punting on the bigger issue, which is like jumping on the new trend. Yeah. I think this becomes much more existential, much faster than any of us thought about. Because back in the day, we knew it would be years before a competitor would really come up and scale, right? And if the market caps of some of these profile pic projects are any indication, like that's real value for, nominal utility, although it's increasing. Like you put that kind of value creation behind a platform that has community and like wealth creation and excitement and all the things that social platforms, and you get something that looks more like Axie Infinity coming out of nowhere with gaming, right? That's the start. It's only going to get better. Same thing with these social platforms. And so I know, at the end of the day, user experience is what wins. And that's the part where if you're only going to go half measure like a Discord or any of these other Web2s that are even further behind, someone's going to show up with that amazing user experience. And the early adopters who already know how to connect their wallets, and yes, it's terrible, and yes, it needs to get so much better, they're going to join and they're going to have success and they're going to recruit, and this will grow and this flywheel will spin. And so I will never bet against the great user experience in those early days that can capture the momentum, especially in this Web3 world. Because like you said, you add something that can give people, like change people's lives financially, and you have every incentive for it to keep growing.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, a lot of these rough edges are just going to get sanded out over the next, 6 months, year and a half. And I think things are going to get a lot smoother for the average consumer to kind of interact with this type of stuff.
And dude, Kevin, this is where, and you'll see me, like I push this. I know this is important to you too, which is why I'm going to use my soapbox. Like for everyone who is in this space right now, I'm very excited. Good. You're early. We're going to make it. And going to the events, talking to folks, meeting folks, like it's still dominated by a lot of folks like us, white dudes who've been in tech all of our lives, which is great. I'm a big fan. But where we all have an irrational incentive to bring more people, and women is an easy one, more people into this, is that we're already seeing all this growth in a very just male dominated environment. And women drive consumption. Women drive so much sort of culture creation and curation. And so it's actually in your best interests to, even if you're not even thinking for any social means, and I think there's some great social justice reasons to want this too, to be expanding this and bringing even more people into the community as quickly as possible that are not representative today, because that is going to further accelerate that flywheel. Because like that chasm, when that gets crossed, it's game over. Because now you're really talking about the engine of what drives all of this in terms of purchasing and culture. Yes. And I'm very excited for that. And I want it to happen as soon as possible.
I agree. And this is like, I think of this as such, especially NFTs, is such an expansive pie. And it's one of those things where, some of the tweets I've done recently have just been drawing attention to Black NFT artists. To trying to have a lot of women artists on the podcast as well. And the reason being is, one, they're fantastic artists, so that's a no-brainer. But two, it's like one of the trends I've noticed is that when these NFT artists, they make money and they start getting paid these royalties, they're backing their other artist friends and they're helping. And so it's this beautiful flywheel of expansion into new markets that, as a standard like white dude off the shelf, like I'm not going to have visibility into. And so it'll be a great way to kind of push all of the different arenas and grow this pie. I think it's exciting.
And dude, I'll double down on this with a weird fact. So when I left Reddit the first time in 2010, I went to go volunteer in Armenia. I'm Armenian, with Kiva, doing microfinance. Lived there for 4 months. And one of the things that gets drilled into your head early on in microfinance, and this is, giving small loans in US dollars, maybe $100, $500, $1,000 loans to people in the developing world, usually to start businesses or do whatever they need. It is statistically significant. You are way better off lending money or investing in women in these communities all over the world. Doesn't matter. When you normalize across different countries or regions, cultures, does not matter. Give money to women, because when you do, let's say they're going to start a business or what have you, the gains from that don't just get reinvested in the business. They get reinvested in their families and their communities. And so this nature that you're talking about in the NFT community of paying it forward to other people in the community, like it is real. We know it exists offline in environments that are way higher friction because it's just hard. You know, you're limited by geography, all this other stuff. And it still happens unequivocally. We take that to the digital world where the barriers fall down and you can find an artist halfway around the world that just excites you because you were bored at 2 a.m. scrolling through Twitter. It's going to keep happening. And that builds that flywheel that, again, just makes us all better off at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think of Web3, what's your involvement with it these days? Because, you know, I see obviously the no-brainer stuff is you tweet about some artists that you like, you set your profile photo to something else. Like, how deep are you going, both in terms of on the art side and collecting artists, and then also on the investment side as well? Okay,
so when I started 776, my VC fund a year ago, and a year obviously in the community, I thought, okay, Web3 is going to be a part of it. Like my biggest win adventure so far was seeding Coinbase, 12. And that was largely because our Bitcoin community was so strong that I was like, okay, if Reddit's this excited about this thing and Brian Armstrong's this talented, like government will probably shut it down, but something interesting will happen here. And a year or two ago, I really got crypto pilled, both with Coinbase going public and then just the energy of really talented people, whether it was on the design front or in the product front, saying, no, this is what I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on. And so, I mean, at least half of our investments out of this fund are going to be Web3 at this point. And look, man, I've made a career just out of finding people smarter than me and listening to them, and especially the builders, not just people smarter. It's a lot of those people who are building stuff, who I know are seeing where things are headed and looking at the tools they use, looking at the things they care about, looking at the things they do. And then just living like all of us, one anxious morning at a time, frantically checking my Discord and Twitter for all the stuff that I miss every single morning.
Yeah.
And trying to participate. I mean, the tools are going to get better. I know you know that. Like, it feels pretty frenetic to say the least. And it's probably always going to feel that way, but we will get better tools. But I'm spending the vast majority of my time. And I think the fact that we make more than half of our investments in Web3 is probably going to increase even in the next year or two. Cause that's the other part, man. The rate of acceleration continues to exceed, certainly my own expectations. Cause I keep thinking, okay, well, this is gonna, this will get better in 6 months. This will get better in a year or 2 years. It'll be so, and then sure enough, it happens at a fraction of the time. And this is that game, my linear thinking brain doesn't want to play, but I feel needs to. And it excites me, man, because we proved in Web2 that this stuff works. And now by adding real ownership into it, it's changing lives. And especially for so many of the artists, I mean, even to see Basel here in South Florida just be taken over by everything from like NFT degens to really amazing artists, is exciting because it's cutting out middlemen that historically have not really played a role. And to hear just one artist, and now I've obviously heard like thousands talk about the fact that, like, your first work tends to sell for the least amount of money. And for the rest of your life, you kind of rue the day you sold it because you see what it sells for at an auction, 10 years later when you've built a career, 15, 20 years later. But to know that now that, that secondary sale actually is going to bring in the vast, vast, vast majority of the revenue for all time.
Yeah.
That changes everything, dude. It means an artist can think about making generational wealth that carries right for generations. Their great grandchildren will be able to withdraw from an ETH address and be like, thanks again, great grandma. That's a really big fucking deal, especially for an industry or for a career choice, an artist that usually has gotten met with, oh geez, do you have a backup plan? Right? I mean, that's fucking world changing, dude. And that's not hyperbole. Like,
when you say great to an ETH address, are you do you believe in a multi-chain world? Like, what's
100%. I'm not a maximalist. Okay. Don't try to back me into one of those corners. I don't know if you had any laser
eyes going on or what was.
I dabbled, dude. The only way to do this job well in my opinion, is to be pragmatic as possible. So I obviously, like everyone, wish I'd bought even more Bitcoin when I did that Coinbase investment. But when ETH showed up, I was lucky enough to be in the pre-sale. I've dabbled in other chains. We'd invested in Avalanche even. We're very intrigued to see this. Messed around with a few others. Obviously saw the Solana partnership that we're doing. But I'm following. I'm most excited about ETH. My largest personal position is in Ethereum still. But no, I'm not a maximalist, man. You can't, you just can't. This is such a big pie that I don't believe any one technology can possibly win. And I'm just doing my best to sort of forecast in 10 years what I think is going to have the most value. That's it. And
I'm in the same camp. I think of them just like databases. Like, I don't know about what was so with Reddit and Dig was the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. What were you guys back in the day?
So we originally built Reddit in Python. Was the programming language. No, that was terrible. That was because Paul Graham was like, you should build it in Lisp and whatever. Within 6 months, we'd switched over to Python and so similar. I remember the wars. I remember even the Rails developers. I remember, PHP kids. Like I feel the exact same way on this. Like, your tech stack at the end of the day doesn't really matter unless it affects the user experience, which again is the thing people actually care about. And there are going to be tech stacks that matter for certain technologies that have to be a certain way or smarter that way. I still think there are plenty of databases that are fine to be centralized. Like, where the user experience is better, do that. And so plenty of dumb money is going to get convinced by a deck that sees like a slide that just says Web3 blockchain, where it doesn't matter, or where it doesn't actually serve a purpose, or where it is actually more expensive or whatever, just stupid. But nah, man, no, come on. Got no time for that. No time for the maximalists.
But I don't know which podcast is going to go out. It'll probably go on everything. But when you think about like net worth and allocations to crypto, like some people are like, 1% of your net worth in crypto, everything else just like robo investing, like completely decentralized. Are you a stock picker? I mean, we don't have to get into the nitty gritty, but like, give me the high overarching kind of like, how do you think about this stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not investment advice.
Of course not.
But I am not very good at most of this investing. And I have remained blissfully ignorant of all the things that I have not felt like I've had an unfair advantage in. So most of my wealth is in fairly, although becoming less so, illiquid startup stock, or like VC carry from funds I've started, or basically long-term investments in pretty illiquid, privately held companies. That is where I have all my unfair advantage. That's where, like, making a phone call to help a portfolio company, shout out Riverside, that like changes the entire trajectory of the company because it's the right investor or the right new user, like that. I'll do that all day long because I can actually affect the market cap. I can, no matter how many water bottles I order off of Amazon, I'm not affecting that market cap. But the crucial thing for me has always been focus on what I'm really great at. I probably have 10% of my net worth in crypto right now. Do I feel like it should be higher? Yes. I think the market, this is the reason I know I'm not good at trading stocks, is because I get too motivated or I get too emotionally attached to shifts in the market. So I like ignoring this stuff. And any of my paper hands mistakes in the past have been because I just feel like, oh God, I've made too much money on this. I have to sell. Like, I'm nervous. Like, this doesn't feel right. And in a lot of cases, having illiquid assets like startup stock has helped me because I just couldn't sell it. And these miracles of compounding are the right ones. But I have a Robinhood account with like what I consider gambling money that I'll invest from time to time. I'll buy a little GameStop, buy a little whatever, just for the lulls.
I love that.
I don't.
So are you in these subreddits still like being
no,
like, all right,
not on Wall Street Bets. No, but like, okay, but it like, there is, I am not a Wall Street Bets degen though.
Yeah, but you must look. I mean,
I see this
when
stuff
this is all
but I
down.
can't, but again, I don't have an unfair advantage there. And so I only want to play in places where I know I have this unfair advantage. And like, yes, I have like a multi-million-dollar collection of trading cards and classic comics and video games, like weird alternative assets that I've been into the last few years. But I really believe and this is advice I didn't get. Like my folks did fine, but like just selling Reddit the first time was more money they were going to make their entire lives. And so I get handed a bunch of money in my bank, or I get wired a bunch of money in my bank account. And I'm just like, who do I talk to?
Yeah.
And I went and talked to the first financial advisor that I met, which was dumb. And he was a nice guy. This isn't one of those horror stories, but I realized a few years in, I was like, you're not that much smarter on this stuff than I am. And I'm not smart at it at all. And I started realizing that, okay, like there's different levels to this. And unless I feel like unless I know I'm not the sucker at the table, like I don't even want to play this game because I'm going to be the sucker at the table. And I've just tried to invest that way, as best I can. So yeah, I stick to the weird stuff. Crypto, NFTs, collectibles, normal stuff, 60-40 bond stock. That's dead.
Yeah. I actually don't hold any bonds at all. I had this robo investor that was, doing all this stuff via Wealthfront. And
yeah.
It's like, I like it because I just don't have to worry about it, man. It just does all the tax loss harvesting and all that stuff.
That's smart.
But I killed the whole bonds because you can like drag like your little allocations. And I killed the whole bonds and I put it all into stable coins because you're getting 8% all over the place on these stable coins. And I'm like, bonds are not going to outpace that anytime soon. I get there's more risk there, but I'm fine with it.
Dude, it's a weird... And that's okay. That's the weirdest part, right? I feel like I should be the most tolerant of this idea of DeFi. But maybe because I feel like I know too much how the sausage works, I'm like, I can only put so much in this because what is clear though is you now have more and more regular retail consumers or retail investors now aware of interest rates that they aren't getting from the traditional institutions. And we already have our institutions at an all-time low of trust. And so here is yet one more knockout punch to be like, the hell are you doing for me? And that, I have my own generational baggage. The generation coming up, the kids, the young people, the Gen Zs listening to this, they give 0 Fs about the way things used to be. Right. Mm-hmm. And they don't have any of the bias that we're encumbered with that I know at least holds me back sometimes where I'm like, geez, I don't know. And they're going to have an understanding of markets and supply and demand and things that like they'll be doing them. They're doing on their smartphones in class while and with infinite resources from podcasts like this to YouTube and elsewhere to self-educate, man, it's going to be wild.
Dude, when they hit a net worth that is like interesting, imagine somebody that's grown up buying skins on Xbox and PlayStation is like, oh, you mean NFTs? They're like skins that I can actually own and make money off of. Yeah. Like it's just going to be a no brainer versus we're like, oh, what are these NFT things all about? Like,
Yes. And the kids who made money flipping sneakers for the last 10, 15 years are similar, right? They were of that ilk that were the earliest adopters of the alternative assets that realized culture and scarcity have value. So I'm going to flip these using eBay or GOAT, Investor, StockX, etc. Got to get all my disclosures in. And I look at this and I'm like, damn, this is exciting because this generation is going to think digital first. And I know, look, I'm going to have to explain to my daughter why I played all those hours of video games as a kid and never got anything for it. And worse, why I spent money on things that I didn't actually own because it will be so foreign to her generation. And then like layer this up, right? So, okay, here's where things get fun. All right. So I had my first job was mowing lawns and I was probably in like middle school. All right. And do you remember the first time you got handed some money from a stranger or not a stranger, but a neighbor for doing a hard day's work? And
I got like $10 to mow a lawn.
Yeah. And it felt like great, right? Because you're now earning money for your work and you're associating it with this crumpled up green bill. And that's a feeling, right? It's this, and it builds up your entire life. And so if I hand you $10 today in USD, is that a Madison? Anyway, I hand you a $10 bill. You know what that feels like because it's evoking all those feelings. If I handed you $10 in Japanese yen, I don't know, unless you spend a ton of time in Japan. I do, actually. Fine. All right. Unless I hand you $10 in Deutschmarks, now gone, but like I guess would have been worth whatever. $10 in euros is too common. Argentinian pesos. I don't know. I hand you something in a different currency. Even if I tell you it's worth $10, you're going to look it, you're going to feel it, and it's going to feel a little foreign. You're not, you're going to Google it and you're going to be like, okay, I guess, but it's not going to feel the same. And that's this irrational bond. It sort of perfectly exemplifies fiat, because at the end of the day, right, it's just a piece of paper that's like shiny and has some dead person on it. And you're like, okay, I feel a way about this. Okay. An entire generation there's some are going to still be mowing lawns. I hope. It's a great job. Those robo lawnmowers are coming too. A bunch of kids are going to make that money playing a game, and they're going to feel that warm and fuzzy, not with the crumpled up green USD. They're going to feel it with the ETH token or the AXS tokens or whatever it is that they're collecting. Dude, that shapes an entire generation to think so differently about time and effort and value creation. I mean, in a way that's not like, oh, ATMs are replacing bank tellers, or, oh, you can pay using your phone instead of paper money. It means, oh, thank you so much, not dead president on the USD. Thank you so much, like internet, for facilitating this world. And that's and I'm not a crypto anarchist. I really like civil society. I'm just thinking ahead to when a generation feels this kind of affinity to something that it doesn't have, there's no nation state attached to it. There's no army attached to it. There's no even physical feeling to it. And that's just going to seem obvious. And how they will value assets, how they will value their time is going to be so foreign to us. And I'm hanging on and trying my best to keep up, because it's going to hit sooner than we realize. And the implications of that are a big deal. They're a big deal.
Yeah. And it is hard to keep up, especially as you get older, right? Because we are so baked in our old thinking
I
that
know.
when we see this stuff, it's just like, I was asked this by a reporter the other day. They were doing a story on the information about just VCs and Web3. And there's a whole slew of VCs that just have no clue what's going on with Web3.
No.
And they're just like completely out of the loop. And she asked me, she's like, why do you think this is? And I said, well, my best guess is that to be into Web3, you don't just have to be a VC. You actually have to be an entrepreneur, because you have to be willing to kick the tires on things and try new things.
Get your hands dirty.
And, install beta software and do all the weird stuff that is like, you probably don't have time to do because you have kids and all kinds of other things and other commitments, but you have to set some time around to tinker. And if you're not willing to do that, you're just going to be locked in Web2 thinking or Web 1 or wherever you last were, right?
Yes. Dude, you're so right. Although you're giving VCs too much credit for assuming that they do any work. but
I think
you're
there's
right.
a certain amount of, when someone hits a certain net worth on the VC side, I've seen the productivity plummet for sure. Yeah.
Totally. Unless they are twisted and are not in it. They're in it for something else.
Yeah, like the Fred Wilsons and the Chris Dixons, like the curious.
I mean, Chris can attest to this. I will text them every few months and half jokingly, but half serious, be mad at him for basically funding all of the new internet. And the reality is, you're right. You're going to see a difference between the Freds and the Chris's and the others who sort of helm or have, lots of AUM, because of that genuine curiosity and that genuine hunger. And so it's not age dependent, although it is a lot easier once you're older and have kids and other responsibilities to block it off. But I can't wait. When Olympia's a little older, I can play with her and it's considered research. So she's only 4. So right now we're kind of limited on that, but
so no second kid, just one. Done.
I don't want to break any news here. We're like, God willing, we'll have a basketball team. That's what I told my wife when we were getting together. I was like, look, if this goes somewhere, I want 5. So we'll see. We'll see. But the bigger move here is that mindset. And I think you're totally right. This goes back to the liability point. Having the established reputation and having sort of made it and figured out the world is actually a huge liability, because now you come in with this bias, and I have to challenge it. We were talking to Bobby Hundreds about this, and I thought this was so smart, and he's an OG from streetwear and street culture. He said, the moments when I feel most kind of disconnected and like insecure and confused and frustrated with some new thing, those are the moments when I check myself to lean in to learn more. And for someone who's been at the top of this craft now, I think really across eras, it was such perfect advice, because that's the feeling I don't want to ever lose. And I think that's where folks start slipping. And that's the part also too, if I could put on business dad hat, that's the thing I want to encourage in my kid, which is, I think, just useful in life, but certainly if you want to stay on top of Web3 trends, which is the things that are going to challenge your thinking in the sort of most initially kind of repulsive ways. Again, like intellectual, thoughtful things are going to be the areas to be like, okay, why does this irk me? Why does this seem totally foreign or weird or different? Because that's where the growth happens.
Yes.
I mean, and it is so hard to not be excited. I have never been this excited in 16 years. There's no point at Reddit. There's no point in any of my VC career, any point in my life where career wise, I've been more excited than I have been in the last year.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like I definitely Web2, I was really excited. Like those were fun early days. And but you're right that this unlocks the promise of a lot of what we thought might come out of Web2, but just never kind of, yeah, you're right. This is much bigger. I get it. If this all works, and it will, it might take time, but it is going to have a much larger impact than just us creating another centralized organization that feeds a few 100 million people.
Right. Dude, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal.
I mean, like, I know this is the high before the fall, and this is the time when everyone says it's different. That's when things go wrong. But I keep trying to stay grounded. I keep talking to as many smart people as I can about all the things that could derail us or whatever. And I still keep coming back to this feeling of, holy shit, no, this really does feel different. This feels like the moments I read about as a kid in the history book of like, oh, these are formative moments, right? The start of the United States, the French Revolution, like all these very, very important moments in society that had implications that shaped humanity in many ways. And I'm like, oh my God, we're actually living through one of these. It's truly global. And to be in the position that you and I are in based on our experience and our network and our capital and other things, like this is this is truly living the dream at a time that I think will shape so much of our future and more importantly, our kids and grandkids' futures. And I'm just like, man, we got to make the most out of this. Like, yeah, I'm definitely.
I'll tell you a secret that I don't think I've ever mentioned on a podcast. But
good. We're doing this live too.
When I was a partner over at Google Ventures, we had a team of over 10 people. I think it was closer to 15 people that did nothing but write kind of, and this has been mentioned elsewhere, but I don't know how in what depth. But do nothing but write code algorithms that would predict, based on a variety of factors, how successful a startup was going to be early on. Okay. And so what we did is at partner meetings, that piece of software was given kind of like a full partner vote, more or less, where we would plug in all of the data, and that data would be like, founders, name of the company, how long it had been around, who else had backed the company, the address of the company. And here's the crazy thing. One of the things that the software was telling us, and they were, this was all pulling from Google corpus of data too. So massive data sets. Yeah. One of the things the software was telling us is that in the last 20 years of venture, it had been proximity to the Bay Area that was one of the biggest predictors of success. So how close you were to the Bay Area. Wow. And what's crazy about Web3 is almost every founder I meet is not in the Bay Area. It's like maybe 10%, maybe 15%. But everybody, it's so diverse and so global. Yeah. That is really exciting to me.
Dude, wait, are you still in the Bay Area?
No, I'm in Portland, Oregon now.
See, I got out of there as soon as I could. I'm an East Coast kid. And so it was inevitable that I was going to make it back East. I didn't think I'd be in Florida, but my wife 5 years ago had a very good idea. Yes, it is really good on the tax front. I came here just simply because she's very convincing and was like, hey, the weather's great. We travel all the time. We'll only be there for the holidays, which are all true statements. But then COVID happened and I'm sitting here on my little farm, living my life. Like, it's amazing. I got fruit trees. I got chickens. Like, I'm full Florida man now. And so I bet Oregon, you got a good setup. You're with all the things you need, all the people you need. But dude, this is the promise of the internet. The whole idea was supposed to be you could be anywhere and you could start a startup and you didn't have to be in the Bay. And I believe those numbers. Now, I think it's safe to say we've obliterated those numbers, which is exciting, man. And it's better. Again, it's just better for all of us. Now, talent has so much leverage. I mean, the number one thing on my mind, on Caitlin's mind here at the firm for next year is how do we build this org to support the new world of recruiting and talent, where talent has infinite leverage. And we need, and our founders need, and our CEOs need to figure out how to access the best people in the world, how to entice them, how to still build cultures in a remote or flexible first work environment like this stuff. Here's another playbook that's getting not rewritten, just written from scratch. And again, it gives more leverage to the people who do the real work, the creators, the workers. I mean, there's so many democratizing parts of this.
Yeah.
That I even think of, not just the folks who do the work, but then the folks who are the kind of like tastemakers or the early like curators of culture that historically have never been in the equation at all, who played a really valuable role. Like the first kids, not just the first creators of like hip hop, not just the first people on turntables mixing records live or remixing them live, but then the people who then took those tapes and started handing them out to their friends, right? And you see this, music is such a good example because it's so mimetic, but like you could see this in every genre of music at every point. You know, there were so many people in the equation between the actual first creators on the stage and then the ones who actually monetized it and then the people who actually made all the money.
Right.
And gone. Like we can actually now reimagine every one of those things in a world where, yeah, if you're early and right and you mint some Bored Apes. There was a story today of a photographer who had one sale for $1.5 million, and it's changed his life. God bless him for being early and minting this one project. And I got to double down on this stuff too, because Kevin, now forgive me, you might have had a whole 10 episodes about this on Modern Finance, but we are already in a scenario where I or anyone is reluctant to sell a Bored Ape because of the FOMO, because of the sort of utility that's emerging around it, loss aversion, all these reasons. I mean, Dogecoin still has a $25 billion market cap for no reason. But there's this communal strength that we know is real on the internet. But in the next 6 months, maybe sooner, maybe a little later, you financially won't have to sell that asset because you're going to have the DeFi infrastructure. Maybe it already exists and I should have invested in it, to just lend or borrow against it, right? To say, hey, look, I got to pay some bills. Rich people do this all the time, right? You have a bunch of stocks in the stock market. Your bank's like, I got you. That's a liquid asset. We know what it's worth. We'll let you borrow up to this much against it. And it's actually a really smart way. Spoiler. It's how rich people make a lot of money because they don't have to sell the stock in order to benefit from the value of it so they can buy their stuff. Okay. That will exist. Oh,
it's already out there. Yeah, absolutely. There's NFTX, there's fractionalized art, there's a bunch of ways to do it. But yeah, it's all relatively new.
That user experience is going to get seamless and it will be the default. And so if you think all these hodlers of apes, let's say, are never going to sell, they're definitely never going to have to sell where they could just borrow against the asset. So what happens? There's a limited supply. That supply is going to shrink as more and more people have more incentives because the utility goes up, because the sort of the sex appeal of it goes up, and just financially, they don't actually have to sell it. So the price is going to keep going up.
Dude, I saw a crazy idea the other day where it was just basically talking about, let's just say you take all the blue chip NFTs that are out there, right? Mm-hmm. And think of them less because of course they're art. Okay, we check that box. But what if they were to be bundled together and they could serve as the cultural underpinnings of a currency so that you can lend against them? So imagine a future Dogecoin is just backed by a bunch of different NFTs that are the backbone of that's the supporting structure and value from it could be cool.
I'm in. I mean, that this is, and what's wild is nothing about what you're saying is a, technological feat at this point,
right?
It's all this is
regulation's the only thing that scares the shit out of me, man.
And then the regulation part. I know, but remember, these are not securities; these are just assets. And
it's crazy when you talk about fractionalizing NFTs. People can say, "Well, now you're offering that up as investment, NFTs," and it's a nightmare. Real quick, I know you have limited time. We're coming up on an hour. I have a few more rapid fire questions for you.
Of course. Hit me, Kevin.
So why an ape on your profile versus a punk, and what are your thoughts on punks?
Dude, I bought 7 of them. I bought 7 that looked like my wife last year because I wanted to get a punk. I didn't find any that looked like me. And for the first time in my life as a white dude with a beard, I was like, why is there nothing that looks like me? Fine. All right. This is a good experience. And I checked it out for my wife and I was like, hey, these are way cheaper than they should be. And I saw this one with the headband and dark skin and dark hair. And I was like, oh, this looks like Serena. So I just bought 7 of them, gave one to her. And then our great grandkids can appreciate the fact that their great grandpa made a good decision. But really imbuing all the obviously great things my wife has done in that art. So that's the only reason I would just feel weird. I should actually bug her about she doesn't mess on social media. Unfortunately is not a fun place to be if you are someone like her. So she doesn't spend a lot of time there. But why do I put that? Cause I felt the ape actually looked like me.
Do you like the ape community? Do you spend time in their Discord at all?
Yeah. Or? And you know what's wild? I reached out and got to know the apes pretty early after the launch. And like any good investor, I was like, hey, so what can I do to be helpful? and they were just like, I don't know, just like, do you? And I was like, oh, this is a whole new world. Like there is something really special about, like I said, this feels kind of punk rock. I don't remember punk. I wasn't alive during the whole punk rock thing, but it feels very, not corporate. And I know I'm the corporate dude who shows up to be like, how can I be helpful? But I loved the fact that they were like, nothing, just like, I don't know, enjoy your apes. And I was like, okay, that's good. And it's been wild, even like at NFT NYC, hanging out with folks, just even walking around in public and seeing someone with the merch, even if they don't own the ape, but they're part of the extended community. Dude, I flash back to Reddit. I know this is supposed to be lightning round stuff. The feeling I had, first fight that we had as founders, this was like a month into Reddit, was I wanted to sell merch. And Steve was like, that's a terrible idea. That's stupid. Don't waste our money. And I was like, no. And this was, CEO override. I was like, I'm going to buy 300 shirts with the Reddit alien with Snoo. And this is before Shopify. So it was before Stripe. This was like janky PayPal.
So you ship it yourself?
Dude. So I put this thing up. I tell everyone we sell out 24 hours. The next morning, I have garbage bags. I stuffed all the envelopes myself, signed them, dragged them all down to the post office, mailed them out. And it was amazing because people were willing to put on their torso this logo that had only existed for a few months based on just random connections between anonymous strangers on our janky little website. And I'm sitting here watching what's happening now. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is all of that essence. But like, I mean, yes, if you have one of the original Reddit shirts, maybe you could flip it for a few bucks on eBay, but like none of the value created or upside captured from those people. I'm so grateful to those people. Those people were so fucking valuable, but they couldn't be properly rewarded in 2005. Yeah. They can be today. And so when I see it happening with Bored Apes, I'm like, oh man, it's like Snoo 2.0. And the way it's being executed is so punk rock and so awesome and genuine. And I love dabbling in this stuff mostly because it fulfills this part of me that feels like the hope and promise and potential of Reddit now gets to flourish across the internet, and it's so much more democratized. And, I don't know. And then most of the stuff that I buy because it's either like looks nice, the community vibes, or it's something that I'm usually just buying for my wife or daughter. Like I have a whole portfolio of doodles for Olympia that all like look like her. And I'm like weirdly sentimentally attached to these things because I believe in I could be totally wrong. And it's the lamest thing ever in like 5 years. If she's like, oh, I want my profile to be that doodle my dad got me from when I was a toddler. But like, I'm trying to think ahead as to what that new savings bond looks like.
Yeah.
And I know it's gotta be Web3, and I don't have the heart to like invest in Shiba Inu on her behalf. So instead I'll stick to beautiful NFTs.
Yeah. At least you can put them up around the house too. Like one of the things that I always talk to my audience about is when thinking about making a NFT investment decision, like this is going to be the classic, risk roller coaster over the next, few years. And so
we're going to have
if you're just
falls.
buying it to flip, then no, like buy it because you want to hang it in your house for the next decade. And guess what?
Yes.
If you bought well, then you're going to be doing fine. Right. But
yes.
just like think about it more as like something I'd like to have up and appreciate. Yeah. And then the price appreciation will come with time. So
100% upvote, man.
Okay. A few more quick questions.
Dig that.
Thank you. I don't own Dig anymore, so it can be an upvote. I don't really care.
You know what? Okay. Can I tell you something else really petty? I'm so happy I didn't do this. I was this close to buying dig.com when it was sold and then redirecting it to Reddit.
Oh my God.
But I was like, that's just too petty. And I didn't do it.
Do you remember when you took Reddit and you completely reskinned it to look like Dig?
Look like Dig, yeah.
What was that for? April Fool's or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was for an April Fool's. Yeah,
I remember going. People are like, they're like, Kevin. They're like, Reddit has changed their entire site to look like Dig, and I'm like, shut up. And I'm like, going to the site. Yeah. No, it was good. I mean, you guys were so good at that guerrilla warfare. You know, it's like
that's all we had, man. We were scrappy.
It worked out. It was scrappy. It was awesome. I love it. Cool. A couple more quick questions. Okay. Raising a child. What's been your biggest kind of lots of new dads out there probably listening. Like, obviously, you have a podcast around stuff like this. Like, but what's your biggest piece of advice for someone that's getting into this world? Any favorite books? Any kind of like thing that
my North Star on this is, and I've talked to. Actually, I got to get you on. We did one season and then COVID hit, and so I need to resurrect Business Dad. But I have talked to so many super successful alpha male leader dads across every industry, from sports, entertainment, business, startups, doesn't matter. And every single one of them without fail is like, this is the thing, especially the granddads definitely say this, but this is the thing I know is going to be my legacy. And no matter how successful I've been on the field, no matter how successful I've been in business, no matter whatever, like, this is it. This is the thing that matters. And so I want to create spaces for more and more really successful, driven, career-oriented dads to be able to talk about it, because we do care. I find overwhelmingly we care. We struggle with it. We know we're not great at it. And there's so many, like, it's a gift and a curse to have a career that I absolutely love. And I suspect you feel this way too, Kevin. Like, I could do this every day. Like, it's the best thing ever. It's the greatest job ever, right? And also know that, like, I've got a responsibility here to be a father, to be a role model, to be present for this stuff. And that's attention. And I know I'm one of the lucky ones who gets to have all of the infrastructure, who can afford all the stuff to make it work as efficiently as possible. And so I think I want to learn as much as I can from other folks who've been a little further along. And the part they just keep coming back to is the fact that these moments really are precious, and that giving your attention in those moments, and it's so hard with this all the time, but that I try to make such a concerted effort when I'm on the clock as dad to be there, to be locked in. And it only frankly took a couple of times of Olympia to be like, pop up, put the phone away, for me to be like, fuck, okay, all right, you're right. And sometimes I'm like, babe, I'm just trying to take a cute video of you for grandpa. And she's like, I don't care. Right. I'm like, no, it was just a photo. I promise I'm not texting. But that, I want to see more and more dads talking about it. It makes me so happy to see it. And I think our generation of dads now has the freedom. We own the microphones, so we get to take control. It's not just Homer Simpson sort of dad takes. And really talk about the fact that, like, this is the best thing we're ever going to do. And we still care a ton about being great at our work, but this is important. And, you know, look, you make a lot of mistakes. You just try your best. And that's 99% of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's true. Like, for me, if I get it's the data, will you come do this? And if I've got that email sitting over there, that laptop sitting over there, and I'm in the middle of something, it's like, unless it's an absolute emergency, I always am like, of course. And then it's like that gets pushed to the back burner because they're requesting my time. And it's like they only are this small for so long, you know?
Yes,
and it's just like
it's going to be gone, man.
It's going to be gone. So I'm just already missing it with my older one. You know, she's getting, I can barely hold her without throwing out my back. So it's like, it's going fast. Next question I have for you, relationship advice, anything, I know, because you're in a tough place because it's like celebrity stuff. I don't want you to say stuff that's going to get in trouble and be on freaking TMZ or whatever, but like, yeah. How do you, because having a kid is tough, and as COVID was tough. Yeah. And for me, I'll start, but like me and my wife, we did therapy, and it was fantastic, and it was great. And it was like the best thing I ever did, to be able to sit down and like have someone help us through what has been a difficult couple of years,
Yeah.
and we're like way stronger because of it. Like, is there anything that's worked for you that you'd recommend to others?
Dude, so highly recommend therapy. I've been all in on, I mean, I say this on the business side from a coaching standpoint, on the personal relationship side. I think one of the highest ROI investments you can make in your relationship. I think, so for sure, even throw the celebrity part out, navigating a relationship, navigating marriage as a white dude with a black woman means I am default putting myself into situations where I want to like always be learning, because it's in many cases, actually, it's the best classroom for it, because it's coming always from a place of love. Like, I know no matter what, even if I say something stupid, even if I have these just unintentional biases that like she catches, I know we're still a unit. We're still a team. She's saying it because she loves me. She knows, like, these are easy, these are harder conversations to have with friends, or even harder conversations to have with strangers. They're conversations we need to have as a country overall. And I think in particular, it's a privilege that I get to have them and hear them and feel them and experience them, because I get to have a higher degree of empathy now, because again, I'm looking out for a daughter that I can only, it's hard enough as a dad trying to relate to your daughter because, gender, but then you layer on the fact that she's going to have a very different lived experience as a black woman than I will have ever had as a black man. So there's layers to it, and I want to be an active student. And I think the best advice I would give myself going into marriage is, number one, you don't need to be the CEO of you don't need to CEO every situation. And I think the biggest challenge for me over the last, 4 or 5 years has been realizing like not every problem needs a solution, like right there. And more often than not, it is okay to actually not engineer a solution for it. And that is a mindset in business that I just can't, my brain is just naturally wanting to solve problems. It's just, I get trained, I get my little biscuit for solving problems, and that's the muscles. And so it has been a hell of a learning experience. It is definitely work, no doubt. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to you. Therapy is a huge asset. Couples therapy, couples counseling, whatever you want to call it, huge asset. Yeah. Definitely do it. And shout out to all my listeners in interracial relationships, because I do think there's an extra level there. And especially with the dynamics, right? Like I've literally lived my life at the top of the social pyramid in the United States. My wife has literally lived her life at the bottom of the social pyramid of the United States, when you think of all the sort of biases and all those things that are locked in. And I take for granted even most basic things, like the fact that literally everywhere I go, people will listen to me or assume that I should be there. And I've never, ever had these moments of feeling things that she and many others have had, just casually walking down the street, which is wild. I'm a big fella too. Even little things, man. It's wild knowing, like, I've never gotten into an elevator with someone and had them shrink away. And I talk to my nephew, who is the sweetest dude on the planet, and I hear the stuff that he has to go through as a black dude in America. And I'm just like, wait, what? I mean, I've literally never, my presence has never made a single person or woman, whatever, feel uncomfortable in a physical space. And I'm 6'5" dude lumbering around. Like, it's the little things that have been a constant education, and I'll be learning for the rest of this life, that has made it harder at times. Cause I'm also like, why does it, like, in these moments, I wish we could remove all this other stuff. But I know that it comes in every conversation we have.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
what kind of podcast is this, Kevin?
No, it's good.
This is the Oprah Winfrey podcast.
I like it.
Man.
I like it because, one of the things that, man, I tell you, I've come to appreciate, and it's just that I'm on this quest to kind of be this person that never shuts down and is someone that is a lifelong learner. Like, I think that's just like the best way to possibly be. Yeah. And so I'm always asking these questions because I want to figure out ways that I can continue to evolve and improve. And I found that when I'm most vulnerable and I can go out there, I mean, that's the only way I can learn. I think that a lot of the mistakes I made at Dig were because I was so shut off. I was like, no, I know this, even though secretly I didn't know what I was doing, and it's like, so for me, I ask questions like this of all the people I chat with, because I want to figure out, what should I be learning? What am I not paying attention to? Where are my biases that I'm not seeing? Like, so it's really helpful.
let me give you one piece of advice that I'll steal, which is, it's not even a humble brag. It's just a brag.
Please.
So I got a few minutes with President Obama, and
that must have been amazing.
It was pretty dope. Pretty dope, not gonna lie. And he's also a very well-known girl dad. And I asked him for advice. I was like, what advice would you give to a fairly new father of a daughter? And he said, well, the thing you want to keep in mind for your daughter is every day. Is that pretty good? Is every day the way that you treat her mother is the way that she's going to expect other men to treat her. So role model the behavior that you want her to expect from a man. That's your job. And I'm like, okay, Mr. President.
Oh my God, that is so good.
Was it really good? And that's always stuck with me. And I think a pretty good dude to be getting some father advice from or husband advice from. And it stuck with me because now I'm just like, wow, okay, like let's like this put more responsibility on me to say, okay, let's make sure we're doing the work. Not just when it's us in private, but also in public and in front of her.
Yeah.
And so for her to see, because like we could make this podcast even longer. We can talk about my own experiences growing up. I feel very fortunate. I had a very loving mom and dad, but I also saw a dynamic there that like, as I've gotten older, I've understood more layers too. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just the gift and the curse of getting older is you start to reinterpret and reimagine a lot of this stuff. And so now I'm like, oh man, this actually had a huge, like there are good and bad things. There's all this stuff that plays into how I now come to expect a relationship. And so I try to run that script in my head when I'm like, okay, like let me think through how we're going to handle this situation, because I'm not just solving this problem today. I'm giving Olympia sort of a blueprint for how she should be thinking about solving it in 50 years.
Yeah, and they pick up on all the little nuances, you know? Yeah, exactly.
Everything. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Alexis, dude, this has been great. I'm so glad we did this. I
am too, Kevin. And I was not ashamed of begging to be on your podcast, and I'm so happy to do this, man.
Well, dude, when you reboot the other business dad one,
yeah,
100%. I'd love to do that.
And then we're going to do a cross country road show, where we do some kind of we need a new name for it. It can't be
live podcast.
Yeah, a live podcasting thing.
Oh, dude, that'd be great.
Web3 Nation. Yes.
I'm game if you're game. Let's do it.
I'm not playing around. We get all this COVID stuff settled. Next year, I would love to ride on your coattails.
We should at least do one at like a NFT NYC or something like that next year. That'd be fun.
Done. Or come down to Florida, have a little fun down at Basel. We can do it after that.
I'd love to.
Okay. All right. So it's happening one or the other or both. If that's what the people want. Also, congrats on Proof.
Oh, thank you.
Dude. I mean, this is why, and I'm still wondering, like, Kevin, I know you've got a great gig over at True, you know, but I mean, Kevin, like, what are you going to, you could do anything. I mean,
dude, I hear you. And I honestly, I got to say, and this isn't just me kissing my employer's ass, but like True has been just a fantastic firm for me to be at. And I raised capital from them a bunch of times before. So I was kind of on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And you know, dude, our next fund's going to be $1 billion plus. So like, it's
a nice coin.
It's big dollars that we're playing around with. I can't go out and raise $1 billion fund on my own. So,
I mean, I would be your first check, just to be clear.
I appreciate that.
That's a testament. I know True knows, but like, I mean, I don't know what those True marketing materials look like, but they should just have a photo of Kevin Rose and be like, Web3, we've got it figured out.
Dude, you know what the coolest thing about them is they've been like, I've been like, I want to do a podcast. Okay, go do it. Boom. I want to do an NFT drop.
Smart.
Of course, we got your back. Do it. Because they know that there's this entrepreneurial kind of drive in me. Yes. And they're like, it's going to come around. And we've already seen that. Like, you know, when I had Eric, the founder of Art Blocks, on the show, we ended up leading his round, you know, like, so some of these connections all just kind of work. So
when are we going to cook? The last time I tried to get you in on Riverside, what are we going to?
I know I should have done Riverside, because now that I look at what they've built, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I use Zencaster, blah, blah, blah. And now I look what they've built, and I'm live streaming on Twitter. And it's like, this is it. For people that don't know what we're talking about, if you're watching the stream on Twitter, Riverside.fm, Alexis tried to get me to invest. I pass on it, and it's a killer podcasting platform. So it's pretty awesome.
I'm looking out for you, Kevin. But we're gonna have plenty of things to cook on, man. We'll be doing this for a while.
And I'm an investor in your fund, so
I'm very grateful, man. Dude, it's I plan to make you a lot of money, and then you know what? We can then go and buy dig.com and use it for something.
I was just going to say, if Reddit ever goes downhill, I promise not to buy it and forward it to my website. So, I can't promise that. I might, though.
You might still do it. I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you one bit.
Awesome, brother. Well, good chatting.
Likewise, Kevin. Fun. Thank you so much, dude. I have so much respect for you. You've been ahead of the game. If you're listening to this podcast, you're going to make it because you're listening to Kevin. I listen to Kevin. You should listen to Kevin. Tell your friends.
Thanks, brother. The respect is mutual. So thanks for coming on.
This is fun. All right, we're doing this again.
All right, here we go.
Stop.
Boom.
See you, man.